Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin Auletta, and week 6 in the UFA is now in the books, and we've got a lot to talk about. Plus, we've also got week 7, which is New York versus DC to preview. And usually that's a huge game, Matt, of course. But now, somehow, it is even higher stakes than it normally is due to the records, with that game coming up on Friday. And in the past, when the Empire were in their dynastic mode, you and I would say, oh, must win, or we would kind of push some of those things here. But between Philly, DC, New York, and Montreal sniffing it, but it feels like between those three, somebody's going to make the playoffs. Well, 2 of them are, and the other one is likely going to miss out. Again, unless Montreal has some tricks up their sleeves and numbers go their way. And then the Toronto Rush, of course, getting their first win of the season. A little bit too late for them, but also maybe not, because the Rush have only played 5 games so far, or make it 6 games so far this season. They're 1-5. So with all the records going on, there's still a lot to do with previews and all that stuff. But I think we have to begin, Matt, which is your least favorite thing to talk about, and that is an Empire loss to the Rush, which again is worst case scenario, I think, for you and the vibes that I know you like to bring to the show.
I thought I left this chapter of my life behind me. I irrationally thought that until the day I die, the New York Empire would never, ever again lose to the Toronto Rush. That might be irrational, but it would have made me happy. And here we are, instead a 22-20 defeat. Sad times.
You mentioned 22-20. And as far as how this game broke down and some of the things that we're going to speak about, we can talk about the Empire side of it. I actually probably want to start with the Toronto side of it more, because I know they're 1-5, but they've got a really good team. And
they almost beat DC.
They almost beat DC 2 days prior, too. Exactly. DC, when I say they survived, they survived. And again, we'll get to DC and that game in the preview. But for the Empire, why did they lose this game? I have quotes on that for those listening. Basically, the 2 things that jump out to me is that it was a few late mistakes, like errors that you just don't expect. Someone, Royce Bailey, who in previous seasons never throws the disc away, never drops the disc, and yet he had a goal line drop when he was fielding the pull, gave the Rush the window they needed. They went up 2, and then a Shapiro drop with 3:30 to go, closed the door. And that was all she wrote. And those were kind of the 2 mistakes. In between that, the Toronto offense was just clean. It didn't really give it away, and they didn't really make mistakes. Now, the thing that I think, if I'm going to say the one red flag throughout this game that I think that the Empire are going to have to take this tape and really diagnose for the next matchup against Toronto in a few weeks, is those hammers from Blastman out of the double teams way, way, way too easy on too many scores. I'm not entirely sure, trying to figure out and diagnose with the camera angles we had. I couldn't really diagnose what had happened there, but because it happened multiple times, it doesn't feel like it was even a miscommunication. But if it was, maybe that's where you're seeing a big body like Oliver Fay. That's where he was supposed to be. And then someone either not tall enough, wasn't in that spot, or whatever it was. But those hammers from Blossom off the double teams was just, it was instant offense for Toronto. Also, Toronto's offense was scoring a little bit too quick throughout that game. And that put a lot more pressure on the Empire O, who was on the field a lot longer. And I do think by the 4th quarter, I think having the Empire offense be on the field as long as they were did kind of push down any opportunity for a comeback.
So one of the stats that, and I have a lot of good things to say about Toronto. Their offense, as you mentioned, was pretty decent. It did not look like Empire were really pressuring a lot. I don't recall a lot of nice blocks. A few of the blocks they did get were Toronto just miscued and threw into some space, and it wasn't like, impressive blocks or running anything down. The stats show that Toronto was 7 of 12 on hucks, but definition of a huck in this sense, they weren't really a lot of deep shots where Empire were just getting beat. It was like these mid-range throws where they were just throwing, as you said, hammers or just over-the-top throws to all this space. And every single time, again, as you mentioned, the camera angles weren't perfect. You couldn't really see the full 14. Like, why is whoever's catching this goal so open? But they were so open over and over and over. One of the things I didn't like was Empire, if they try to roller pull or different things, or even off a turnover, they acted like they were going to double, but then didn't actually double sometimes. And then Toronto just ripped these great hammers or these massive break throws, and then no one was there. And then it was like either a goal or off to the races with some space to kind of move downfield. I don't know what Empire was trying to do there. They didn't get those double teams on to kind of make those throwers either have to dump it or second guess or find something more difficult. It was just big dude with a disc ripping it to his buddies. Like it just looked like they were playing catch out there sometimes. So that was a little discouraging.
Well, let me ask you from this defensive approach here. I think we saw Toronto's kind of been building their identity offensively as they've added all these new pieces and they've retooled, like we've talked about. And to me, not only did Carkland's had too many opportunities to get comfortable with the disc, he had a goal, he had 7 assists though, and a block. Barbieri got free 6 times in the end zone. And while Gallant's stats weren't that amazing, that kid was definitely a problem and circulating around the way that we credit the likes of the Randolphs and those guys in the mid area. But I think the bigger picture and the question I have for you is that as big as the Empire are now, I think they still did seem to struggle trying to decide between Jake Lewis, Wookie Lewis, Blossman, and then Carkland, all 4 guys who are big boys. And you see the way that other teams defend, well, it had to defend when it was Lithio and Yacht, or whether it was Lithio and Babbitt, where you have these players that if you allow them to beat you deep, they're going to crush you. But then you have to give them these huge unders. And I think when we're talking about the space, that is where the Empire might have been caught between two minds, that Jake Lewis was just huge swaths of unders. And then that's a guy that immediately he's got a lot of time on the disc now because he carved up a big under and he's got the deep looks. Wookie Lewis is the one who doesn't necessarily have the huck, but if you're going to give him 2 seconds on a disc, he's going to find that throw that he knows how to make. Blassman's the same way. It's another big body. I think late in the fourth quarter, it was Blassman against Axel Agami Contreras, and Agami Contreras had positioning, but Blassman, again, just a big boy. And there was another one in the fourth quarter where it was Carkland's. I don't remember who the other Empire player, but it was Auletta who, yeah, again, Carkland, just those are big boys. And so when you're trying to defend big guys like that who also have those deep throws, it just seems like that is how Toronto created all their space. That the Empire do you commit all the way and say, hey, we're just going to force all these guys out, or we're going to just force everybody under and see what we can do there? Because it just seemed like you wound up having big guys who could have beaten you deep, but instead you do force them under, and now they've got time to throw the disc. And again, Carkland's, he was beating them deep, he was beating them on the unders, and yeah, it just seemed like the Empire defense was a bit out of sorts in what the overall game plan was to how to limit those big bodies.
Yeah, I mean, Empire were missing some key players. They didn't have Marquez. They didn't have Oliver Fay.
Yep.
They didn't have Sam Jonas. So I mean, those are some big, tall, or good in the air players. So I mean, that really hurts when then you're kind of asking Antoine to cover all of that space and patrol a lot of that deep area all by himself. And clearly, the switching and the helping and whatever, it was not in sync. Jack Williams played mostly on defense. I have some thoughts on that, but which I'll get back to. But it looked like he was kind of trying to like eat up some space and gunk things up a little bit, but didn't get like the help. They weren't all like cerebrally on the same page. I don't know. I think I would have maybe liked to have seen a flatter mark at times just to discourage some of the deep shots, or because there was some wind issues in the game. There were a lot of drops, I think, just from like the disc, probably like a little turbulence on some easy passes that you wouldn't expect that many drops. And then a few throws floated. So I just think they could have, like, flatter mark might have made some of that a little more difficult rather than just like some of the marks were just so sideways that it just looked like you were
Yeah.
giving the entire field and just letting them rip it wherever they wanted. And more often than not, they were coming out ahead on those.
I also thought it was a really tough game for the officials to officiate too, because to your point, New York's defense was a lot of switching, and there wasn't as much bang bang plays pressure on these under catches. While Toronto's defense was the opposite, where they were going all out aggressive on those unders, almost to the point of recklessness at times. Like I don't have particular names or moments for you, but
Yeah, there were a few like a little
yeah,
quick bang bang
they also
whatever, but
have
it wasn't excessive. It was just it happened a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, but they also have, again, some really, really good under defenders in Stonehouse, in Adibe. And then you've got some good deep help defenders like Turner, like Armstrong. All those players had a block or more. And then, of course, I'll just give you a little runway here to talk about Mark Lloyd. Had the worst plus minus in the game at -3 with 2 turns and a drop. But yet, watching that game and not being in Toronto, it still felt like he gave the Rush a boost. It felt like these young kids were just excited to play for him and with him, that it didn't matter that he technically had a statistically bad game. You did feel like that Mark Lloyd effect was there, with the exception of the time that Ben Yot absolutely roofed him. And
Yeah, yeah. I would take a -3 as a 40-year-old. Just if my team still won, that's fine by me. So sure, I'm sure he would have liked to finish positive or maybe just even 0. But no, they got to win. Who cares? Good for him being out there. And it statistically might not have been great, but I felt like he played fine. Like didn't look like you were watching an old man run around get roasted. So Yacht's going to get everybody sometimes. So back to some of the Empire things. I don't even know where I want to start. So many different things. Like there were issues on defense. The offense just like lackadaisically threw into a bunch of poaches. And I don't want to take anything away from Toronto because they saw those lanes and they jumped them. But a lot of them looked like very easy to see. It wasn't like there was a screen and you couldn't see it coming. It was just like, this is a crowded area. Don't throw it. Oh, they threw it. Oh, turnover. Like there were a bunch of those. And one of the things I think it looked like Empire was running out of a loosely based like horizontal offense or a split stack at different times. And I felt like they were all just like in each other's way and it let Toronto players peel off and attack. And I just felt like this team, the way they were composed this weekend, would have been much better in what I feel like is more their like vertical offense where there is more space for them to operate without players poaching off. Because when they do poach off, you have the whole other side of the field. But they were just like in the way horizontally, and then it let Toronto kind of gum everything up. I don't know. I didn't like their offensive structure. And then, I guess talking about Jack again real quick. Jack Williams clearly not 100%. So he played defense
12
as
points, 12
no,
points.
no. Sorry.
No. Yep. So yeah, 12 points, 11 on D, 1 on O, and that O point came in the fourth quarter.
Right. And he turned it over.
When Yacht, well, he also then got it back too.
Man,
but
he threw it right at him, but sure.
And then Yacht also, to mention that fourth quarter, that was kind of what the Empire, and you've criticized them in past years, but they did use their break last case for mercy. We need this game. Yacht played, I think, 5 of 7 points to end the game, and Randolph played 4 of 6 or something like that. Yeah,
the two of them were great. Yeah, they were absolutely great. That's all I have to say about that. They were great.
I'll give you the stats though. But I mean, Randolph plus 8, okay. 4 goals, 4 assists, 1 block, 500 yards, and Yacht 2 goals, 3 assists, 2 blocks, a +7, and 0 turns. Do you mention Ben Yacht with all the wind? Yacht was, Yacht is quietly. I know it's 3 and 4, and it's so weird because the Empire 3 and 4, and yet we said, hey, Ben Yacht, it's even more responsibility on you. Can you be a superstar? And Ben Yacht's having a really good season every week. I talk about how good Ben Yacht has been, and again, Benny has been that good, and yet the record doesn't reflect kind of what we asked of him, which reminds you that yes, it's 20 guys on a roster, it's a whole team thing, and individual success doesn't always necessarily lead to final results.
Before I go back to Jack, I will say that Yacht is basically playing like MVP level, but I assume he won't sniff any MVP accolades if the team is floating at 500 or barely making the playoffs. But yeah, he's really standing out there. He's doing an awesome job. So what I wanted to say about Jack, right? I wasn't actually questioning that he played defense. I know he played pretty much predominantly defense.
Yeah.
If you're kind of hurt, I don't know if you've played a bunch when you're kind of banged up or whatever, like, why are you on defense? That defense is all reactionary. It is harder. When you are on offense, you dictate when you move, where you move. You pick your spots. You can kind of survey the field. You can kind of move and set up a cut and do all these things to put yourself in a position where even if you're only 80%, right? I'd like 80% Jack Williams on my team, sure. But if you're on offense, he can dictate all of those things and do things more effectively. Instead, we got a version of Jack on defense where, how hard could he really run? How much could he really pressure anything? And it's all reactionary. And then that's just infinitely harder when you are worried about like re-aggravating a hamstring pull or something like that, because you just you're not in full control. You are reacting to whatever your cover is doing. And he switched a bunch, probably to limit some of the movement, but it still wasn't like dynamic enough to cause blocks or that much chaos. It was kind of just like lost in the shuffle. So maybe they wanted him on defense to help the offense, but when the defense did get the disc, that D line gave the disc right back immediately most of the time. Like the defense barely played offense this game. They had a few completions, but it was a disaster out there.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, it sounds odd and it sounds like I'm making an excuse, but Sam Jonas going down right before the game, it did greatly affect the defense's ability to move the disc. That you'd think that, again, Shepard playing 9 points on D and Jack playing the 11 points on D, again, but still not looking right. He was 5 of 7 in his completions with 2 turns. So Sam Jonas going down, yeah, to your point, the D-line, they failed to convert their chances, just 3 breaks to Toronto's 5, but the Empire only completed 3 of their 11 break chances, and Toronto was 5 of 11, and it was a 2-point loss. Hucks were, again, as you mentioned, 6 of 9 for the Empire, and that was something that all the pundits said prior to, that the Empire not being able to huck, not being able to go deep. Well, that actually hasn't been a problem this season. The numbers bear out and bear fruit, but the rest were also 7 of 12 on their hucks, as you mentioned, and a bit too open. So yeah, the D-line offense was an issue, and even adding Ethan Lehman to that, he played 8 points on defense, but it just seems like they were trying to throw players at a problem. Again, Sam McCrory, I can't individually look at players like, oh, this player struggled, this player struggled. I think in totality, as a unit, the D-lines, both of them, kind of struggled to, again, as you mentioned, create turnovers, especially late in the game in the fourth quarter, and then to also then convert their chances. Again, 3 of 11 is not going to help you win in the league. You're going to need at least 5 or 6, even against, again, Toronto, Montreal, because as much as it sounds like we're being really negative about the Empire, I also want to remind you that Toronto did not deserve to be 0-4 up to that point. I mean, there are, or 0-5 up to that point. They are a good team. That is what they proved by beating the Empire and taking DC all the way to the wire. I'm going to give you the last word on Toronto, because speaking of DC, we're going to head into the preview for this Friday.
Sure. Last word. Yeah, they're pretty decent. That's all there is to it. I mean, the division is very deep. It's absolutely got to be the deepest division in the league. I don't even think it's questionable. I mean, most divisions, there's already like a clear top 3, bottom 3, kind of maybe like 1 or 2 middle teams, but basically that's it. In this division, if you told me any of the teams except maybe the Rush, just based on their current record, but maybe not talent, if you told me that any teams were going to make the playoffs or not make the playoffs, I would believe it at this point, right? Like Boston's probably a lock for a playoff spot unless things go horribly, horribly wrong the rest of the way. But everybody else, I mean, this could shake out a million different ways. It's basically you get a playoff level ultimate, or at least playoff intensity meaning in early June now, because all of these teams need all of these wins to sniff out one of these last spots.
Empire fans, it's that time of year again. The UFA season is here, and New York is offering season ticket packages at watchufa.com/empire. Packages include your general admission pass with merch perks and free unlimited popcorn, a disc, and a family pack so you can bring the whole household. Not to mention all season ticket passes include admission to all our away games as well. Just show your pass at the front gate.
That's exactly right. In the West, Spiders are 5-1, Shred are 4-1, Summit are 3-2. And those are the big 3. Because again, Seattle 1-6, even though they have the talent there, record does not show it, and the Steel 2-4. In the East, we just talked about all 6 teams. You watch the games, those are all playoff teams, but obviously only 3 of them are going to make it. In the South, the Soul are 4-0, Hustle are 6-2, Growlers are 5-2, and then the Flyers, Aviators, and Havoc have been a step below. So the top 3. Central Division, it's Chicago, it's 2-0, Winchell are 3-1, Radicals are 3-1, and then you have the Thunderbirds, the Alley Cats, and the Mechanics, who all just haven't looked good enough as well. So yes, the other 3 divisions basically have a top 3, and then everyone else, so it's all sorted out there. And then in the East, it's just absolute chaos. So speaking of chaos, usually the Empire and the Breeze, when you're talking about the 3 playoff spots, they're usually able in the last few seasons to say, all right, we're going to get 2 of those spots and don't care. Or is it Boston? Is it Montreal? Is it Philly? Whoever gets the 3rd one, whatever. But now this Friday, we have the 3-3 DC Breeze hosting the 3-4 Empire, 7 p.m. on Friday at Carlini Field. Now, here are the 20s, where I think things get really interesting. There's no Christian Boxley, no Luke Rayfuse, no Alex Fall, no David Bloodgood for DC. But Aiden Downey will be making his season debut, who is arguably one of the top 5, just based on talent alone, players for the Breeze on their roster. Now, the Empire, with other good news, arguably have their top 20 available for the first time this season. And hopefully you've got Jack Williams. I know it's only 5 days, but hopefully you've got 5 extra days of health for Jack Williams. And the Empire will just be missing Dmitry Suvorov from their regular 20, plus hoping that Sam Jonas can bounce back from his injury quickly. He's questionable right now, so we'll see what his status is. But arguably, Anthony Nunez and Matt Cat Stevens can look at their roster and say, hey, Suvorov's out, but we're going to go with our favorite 20, or not favorite 20, but the 20 players that we think we have at our disposal to beat DC. And that is an opportunity that they have to make that choice, which again, there is no 20 that DC could pick without Christian Boxley and David Bloodgood and Fall. That makes me feel like that is the best 20 that they can put on the field against the New York Empire. So that's the 20 here. As we mentioned, DC is coming off a 21-20 win over Toronto and a 22-17 loss to Montreal. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the Montreal game because I know it's the next day and they were tired, but they allowed, that being the Breeze, 9 of 11 hucks versus Montreal, just 3 of 7 themselves. They were broken 9 times to Montreal's 4, turned the disc over 22 times to Montreal 16, and were only 71% in the red zone. So for New York, if you thought we were negative about New York, and I'm reviewing that DC against Montreal game, it feels like it's a race to the floor, but that's not true. Because again, we want to say it and look at this through the prism of the East is very good. Montreal already beat the Empire. We know that. We know that Montreal is good. And if I'm a DC fan, I'm just as concerned going into this Empire game. So again, for it feels like the Empire are limping into this game. Well, DC also are coming off a loss and for all intents and purposes are also kind of limping into this game.
Yeah, limping is like hard because all the teams are good. It's not like somebody went out and, no offense, lost to the new expansion Vegas Bighorns or something like that, where it's like, oh wow, this is not going well. It's like all of these teams are good. What are you going to do? I mean, maybe the teams that make the playoffs are 6-6 or 7-5. I mean, that's a reality if everybody just keeps beating up on each other. And New York lost to Toronto, and that was a shame. It felt like the opportunity was gifted to them to kind of rise up when Philly lost to Carolina and DC lost to Montreal. But now it's like Montreal has tacked on 2 good wins against decent teams. If they just keep it up, they might really be in the hunt as well. And if New York and DC trade wins and losses, it's just, I don't know. I don't really see anybody necessarily separating themselves here. I don't know. From a New York perspective, I am a little concerned about Jack and Sam obviously not being healthy. That Sam Jonas, that could hinder the performance greatly here. But I still just don't know what they want to do with everybody on offense and defense. I feel like some pieces need to shift still. Something just doesn't feel right. I mean, if you told me Max Shepard was going to play 9 points on defense in a loss and that was it just seems strange. I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a better use for him somewhere, but I don't know where. I don't know who you move. I mean, Everett Shapiro played pretty well in that game. He had the late drop, but that throw was also like a touch behind him on his hip. It wasn't like the easiest thing to catch. I mean, should he have probably caught it? I'm sure he would say, I got to catch that, but it wasn't easy, and he did play pretty well for most of the game. And it's like, I don't know who they shift and where or what they do. It's just some things, the pieces don't seem to be clicking in the right spot. So even if DC is missing a few good players, maybe you'd want to give the edge to the Empire, especially since the Empire games, Montreal didn't beat them by quite as much. But you can't, it's not A to B.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get this weekend. It's hard to say. And, I think you said it perfectly a week or two ago. The Empire could win the whole thing or they could not make the playoffs. And I feel like that really, it's like hard to prognosticate when you don't know what you're going to get here.
Well, let's see what the schedules have in store, because here's the Empire. They finished the season with 4 games at home, which I think is another huge factor to remember here, because the Empire have basically been on the road all season. They only had 5 of their 12 games were at home, and 4 of them are still yet to be played. So take care of business at home. Saturday, June the 14th at the stadium at Memorial Field versus DC. Friday, June 20th, then at Joseph F. Cicina Field versus Toronto. Sunday, July 13th at the stadium at Memorial Field versus Philadelphia. And Saturday, July 19th at the stadium at Memorial Field versus Boston. A reminder, too, that the Royale, they have Philadelphia on Friday, and then they also still have Toronto 3 times on their schedule. So if Montreal takes care of business a trio of times, which I don't think is going to happen against Toronto, I mean, if anything, this is going to sound crazy, but Empire fans might be looking at the schedule and saying, all right, Toronto, we're rooting for you in this instance based on the schedule, because then DC, they've got it just as hard. 5 games after this Friday, they finished the season with at Empire, hosting Montreal, at Boston, hosting Boston, and at Philadelphia. So if Boston really is the best team, then that might be 2 losses that DC are going to be taking that they're already putting on the schedule, to maybe 1 loss that the Empire might be taking at the end of the season. So for the Empire, yeah, it's DC, Toronto, Philly. The next 4 games, I don't know, it means that says everything, but if anything, the Empire might be able to already kind of lock up a position. We'll see how Philly do in all this as well. It's just
I have
permutations. Like usually on the broadcast, and you've been with me up in the booth, I get confused very easily. If I don't see at least a game or 2 between records, I get all up in my head. And so I'm going to need Charlie Eisenhood and company and our producers to really break it all down for me in a million different permutations. So again, credit to them because they have to make the graphic and I just read it because I have an impossible time figuring it out at the end of the season.
I don't know if it's statistically possible with all the matchups left and the current records, but yeah, like is somebody going to make the playoffs out of the East with a 5-7 record? I mean, it almost feels like that because people are going to lose somewhere. I don't know. It is scary to think that Montreal does have 3 games against Toronto, who might technically be the weakest team in the division. Like, I don't even know. And if they are, what would they be in a different division? Like a playoff caliber team, possibly? Like, it's wild.
Well, let me ask you, I know I'm kind of springing this on you. We can probably push this off until like next week after DC, but we've been talking about all UFA players, but if I had an all East division team, I'm not even sure who to pick because watching Kirkland this year, and again, I've been watching a bunch of his Toronto games, he's probably there. Like he's probably one of the top 5 players in the division this season, and he's in the 6th place team. So then you're filling in and saying, well, okay, all right, you're going to put Jeff Babbitt on that list. We just talked about Ben Yott.
Yeah,
probably deserves a shout on that list as well.
100%. Yeah,
right. And then you're trying to work through the rest of the teams because again, Scott Heyman, I think is almost locked for that list as well. And then for Montreal, I guess they just might be hurt because I don't know. Tremblay Jonka has been that good as well. Because how do you say that he hasn't been good enough? So then you're going to say, all right, well then is it a DC player that would miss out on this all UFA or whatever we're calling it here? Because I mean, while I stall here, I'm just going to pull up the numbers for DC for the breeds again.
All East incredible.
I mean, I guess
use vowels, but yeah.
Yeah, but I guess for DC, their problem is that they haven't. Boxley's only played 3 games. And so, I mean, for Jacques Nissen, he's had his good moments and his bad moments. But yeah, Cole Jurek leads with a plus 19. But yeah, Cole Jurek has been a step down from all the other names we just mentioned. So yeah, DC, I guess, is the team that would miss out on our top 5, like all East division team. But again, it's a credit to the fact that Kirkland is a must-have on that list, that the Rush have an argument to say, hey, we've had the best player in the division this season, and we are just 1-4. And then Montreal could say the same thing where, hey, we're 2-3, but Tremblay Jonka has arguably been the best player in the division. And as far as individual talent, again, it's 20, it's a whole team concept. I get that. But it's hard to argue that Toronto can't just have another huge game from Kirkland like he did against the Empire. And hey, what if they win out? Then winning out would mean that because I'm so good at math, they'd be 8-4, which would be, I mean, that'd be
wild. That'd be wild.
It'd be, yeah, it feels like impossible, but again, crazy things that happen when you have.
We would replace my face with a crying emoji for the show when they finish 8-4. Yeah,
that's not my graphics budget, but I will get on it.
I think we could just like, I don't know, Snapchat filter or something. Like the crying fans in the arenas. Like we'll just do the constant tears. Yeah.
Well, Too Long didn't read. It sounds like we were negative about the Empire today, but that's
no. It wasn't even that bad. I mean, yeah. It didn't look great. I will say this was probably the most disappointing game so far. I know we talked about the doubleheader double loss was a bummer, but like I saw a lot of good things. But this was just disjointed. I mean, they were missing some key players and some big bodies, which definitely would have helped against Toronto. And yeah, it just needs a little fine tuning. It's not like they're bad. I mean, not at all. I mean, we keep saying they could win the whole thing or may not make the playoffs. So
The East
like,
Division is good.
and that might be a stretch, but I mean, yeah, they're of that caliber. If they go on a run and they just kind of figure it all out, it's just, sometimes putting all the pieces together is difficult. And, you can have a ton of talent, but if everybody's not available all the time or, just doesn't click or it's hard. The season is short. It's not like an 82 game season like the NBA where you can tinker with different situations and figure everything out. It's like you have to win now to make the playoffs and go from there. So it is difficult.
I mean, the Atlanta Hustle looked like the best team in the league for the first 6 games or 5 weeks of the season. Then they just lost 2 on the road, and now they're 6-2. Minnesota Wind Chill, defending champs, are 3-1. Yeah, the Glory are 4-0, but they've been tested. The Spiders lost to the Summit. The Spiders now 5-1. Summit are 3-2, but the Summit also lost to the Steel, who are 2-4. So again, there is no team that has looked. Austin's also 4-0, very much like the Glory, but I still think they have a bit of prove it left to do. And then it's funny because the Chicago Union at 2-0, obviously their 2 wins are against Minnesota and against Atlanta. So Chicago's like, oh yeah, I mean, this is our season, but they have 10 games left to play in this season, which is just impossible to think because you said it's a sprint. But yeah, Chicago's like, I mean, look at all these teams, all these mistakes and all these issues. But again, they played 2 games. So it's hard to say who Chicago is going to be 10 games from now.
And I don't really, sorry to cut you off. I don't really like that schedule imbalance. I feel like they need to eventually make it a little better. I understand it's not going to be perfect where every team plays every week and it lines up and looks beautiful, but only having 2 games played while other teams have like 7 or 8 games played, it's kind of unfair because they can see who's got wins and losses. And now some teams might already be like eliminated and, you might not put your best foot forward because hey, we're 1-6 and they're 2-0. It's like it kind of puts a little imbalance on something. So that's like a minor critique, but it'd be something that I would like the league to kind of fix moving forward a little bit, just to keep it a little more in line. But I mean, I understand all the scheduling issues.
Counter argument: if Detroit, for those opposite reasons, does win out and the Detroit Mechanics make the playoffs at 10-2, change nothing. And
yeah. You know what? You're right. You've talked me out of it. That was very easy.
Because they've also only played 2 games.
Yeah. I want to highlight, and this will sound like I'm tying in a negative thing. In 2017, Empire, we did not make the playoffs. That was the last time. And so I don't want to say that that's going to happen now. But one of the things I think correlates a lot is we didn't always have our roster available every week that year. And it was a lot of things in flux. I mean, we had some really amazing players, but some people were hurt, kind of in and out. Chris Kotcher was on the team, but he only maybe played like 4 or 5 games. So, he was at a lot of practices, but then he couldn't always participate because he had Team USA duties. So like that stuff just kind of throws a wrench in things where it makes the tinkering even harder, where you might have a really good 25, 30 players, on your team, but when they're not available frequently, it just makes all the chemistry issues stand out a little bit more because you're not necessarily getting the best reps with your unit, like your exact crew every single time. It's like, would we have wanted to plug in Chris Kotcher for more games despite not having played with him as much? Absolutely. But, it was just like up and down. Everything was just, it wasn't as smooth as it could have been. And I think that 2017 was definitely talented enough to be in the playoffs. We just kind of missed out on 1 or 2 games and ended up on the outside. And I hope that doesn't happen to this team here because I do think they have the talent, they have the players, but not everybody's been available these last few weeks, either for injury or just other commitments, or we're going to have some Team USA stuff. So like I understand all that. It's just turning out to be a tough spot for the Empire this year, and I hope that the talent and potential they have doesn't get squandered as a result of that.
Well, yeah, looking back at 2017, the way I kind of remember that season is that, Chris Kotcher just wasn't available in the times when the Empire could have got a win here or a loss here. And to me, again, Chris Kotcher, just on name alone and recognition and what we know that he is as a player in the 21st century, like Chris Kotcher is an all-time talent on the New York Empire. I mean, you played with pretty much everybody or watched everybody through. Is Chris Kotcher a top 5, like just talent alone player in Empire history? Like, yeah, he came nowhere near, of course, like when you and I had talked about the top 7 all time and all those things. Like, he doesn't come near because, of course,
sure, because he barely played. You're right. Yeah.
Season, but as sort of talent alone in the Empire history, like he's top 5, right?
Probably. So he's not as tall as some of the big boys. And I like to point out that Jeff's not actually that tall. He's just massive and he jumps high and he does it all. But yeah, I mean, he's got to be top 5 if you were to just do talent and how good they were and how much they can impact the game and what they're good at. I mean, he was an A-plus defender. He's a great thrower. He was super fast, super quick. He could jump relatively high. He wasn't necessarily skying everybody all over the place, but
his timing is impeccable.
Above average in the air. When you pair that with the speed and the field sense and everything, then, I mean, it didn't matter if you can jump through the roof as long as you jump and time it properly.
Well, I wanted you to set me up for that because Jack Williams, that would be if the Empire were to miss the playoffs. That's why I'm not hitting the panic button yet, because this would be the season I would say if they miss the playoffs, Jack Williams was not healthy. And when the player that you really do say, hey, that's our guy, that's our number one in terms of moving the disc and all the things that Jack adds to the Empire on both sides of the disc, as well as defensively getting the disc back for that offense. Like, Jack is an underrated, I think, defender in the league. So far, Jack really has not been healthy throughout this season. And I think that's thrown a monkey wrench a little bit in the plans. And that's why also the panic button for me, I'm not hitting it all the way. Again, the Empire might be 3-4, but again, they've only got to catch the Philadelphia Phoenix at 3-2. And they have 2 games now with the Breeze, who are the only other team in front of them that aren't the Glory. And the Breeze are 3-3. So, I mean, as far as hitting the panic button, I'm nowhere near that because, yeah, if Sam Jonas and Jack Williams look healthy, the Empire, there is this world where the Empire can go out and completely blitz the DC Breeze, and they look great. They look like a championship winning side again. Again, they are also 3-time champions. So I also don't want to take away the fact that the Empire do have some kind of championship pedigree, like between ownership and the coaching staff and the veterans on the team. Like, yes, this is adversity that they may not be used to, but they also have so many faces that have gotten knocked down, like in 2021 when they lost to the Flyers in the championship game. And they picked themselves back up. And so this is an Empire team that, again, I'll tell you when to hit the panic button, but as, an Empire fan, like I am hovering over the button, but I am in no way slamming that panic button.
It's also crazy to think that they could lose one more time and hopefully not next game, but be 3-5, right? I guess that would be the next game. But just in theory, let's say it's not specifically against DC. If they were 3-5 and we're talking about all these teams having to still play each other and battle each other, I mean, they could still end up 7-5. So would it be unlikely to go on a win streak through everybody based on what we also just said? Sure, but it's all possible. Exactly, like, it's not time to panic. They just need to take care of business and they will be fine. And, when you're 3-4 and everybody looks good, that might not be the message you think. But I think that even when they've lost and it's been close, they've been right there. I think if it all just kind of comes together, it will be fine and they will be there. And, Philly sure went out to a hot 3-0 start, but maybe they're coming back down to earth. I mean, they're a good team too. I don't want to discredit them here, but, maybe they accrue a few more losses and they're on the outside. It just because they're in second place currently doesn't mean anything the way this might all shake out.
Hot birds, cold birds for a reason. That is,
yeah.
Again, respect Philadelphia when they're hot. Then they get cold as well. All right. So that, again, will be a reminder that it's 7 p.m. on Friday at Carlini Field, with 3-4 Empire are being hosted by the 3-3 DC Breeze. And then the following weekend, it's Saturday, June the 14th at the stadium at Memorial Field. So not Facina. It's Saturday, June 14th at the stadium at Memorial Field versus DC. So get your tickets for that. It's only, I think, about 10 minutes away from Facina Field. So it's not too hard. You put it in GPS, you'll get there all the same. So for Matt and I, again, we say, everybody, do not panic. Let's just have some fun because all these games in the East it's an absolute bloodbath. So I appreciate everybody for joining us again, and we will talk to you next week.